Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a video that everybody's been asking for recently, which is to talk about how I handle healing in pugs. So we're going to look at this +9 pug Grim Batol and how I handled healing this and what I did to kind of make life easier for everyone. So starting off, we just have these two brutes and the Earth Caller. The Earth Caller is the only caster in this pack, so you're going to want to put it on focus and make sure that you get as many kicks as you can. The dangerous part of this mob is the giant AoE that the destroyer does, and it knocks everybody back, so you want to make sure that you're positioned well, and this is a great spot for wings. Anytime you pull one of these dragons, it's going to be dangerous for your group. Twilight Flame, if you get it, you just want to move out of the group, place it along the edge. You can see one of the melee DPS doing it right there, so that pull was nice and easy. Obviously, there's only so much that you can do as a healer if your teammates are just standing in the fire, or if they're getting launched into the middle of the chasm, then that is what it is. But the key to pugging is to just focus on the things that you can control and not worry about the things that you can't. So we're going to focus this Earth Caller, we're going to get kicks in, we're going to use our Hodge if some dangerous cast is going off that we can't stop. And with this affix, one of our best utilities is Blinding Light. So every time that affix spawns, you can use Blinding Light, and it will disorient the mobs or the orbs, and it'll just instantly clear them. You can Blinding Light every other set of orbs. So right here, you'll actually see that. I'm going to go back for a second because you actually see that this Earth Caller got its cast off. I should have focused that and kicked it, but I didn't, and because of that, it got its cast off. You can see the mass tremor going off right there. I tried to target at the last second, but I couldn't. So as soon as that goes off, we're just going to press Virtue and make sure that we top the group quickly. Now we're going to make sure that we get kicks on the Earth Caller, probably follow that up with a Hodge, although it looks like it's going to die before its next cast, so we're not going to worry about that. Remember that Hodge is super useful. I definitely should have used it more in this first area. Hodge is a very useful tool and should be used pretty aggressively. For the boss, this boss is super straightforward. There's really nothing to think about with this boss, except you want to make sure that you press Virtue right before every one of those AoE casts, the Commanding Roar casts. Don't forget that Virtue gives DR, so you press Virtue right before it and everybody's happy. Place these circles at the edge of the room, and don't press Virtue when those circles go out. I know it's tempting, but you can just single target heal everyone up before this cast goes off. And then now is when you want to press Virtue right before the Commanding Light. So I did the opposite there, and you'll see I actually fell a little bit behind on healing. It's really not a big deal because there's no healing check on this fight, but if you want to be efficient with your globals, you should definitely save Virtue for the Commanding and not use it on the drops, which is what I did here the second time around. We're going to move on to the trash in here. So with this one, you'll see I focus one of the Beguilers, and I'm just going to be getting kicks on it whenever my kick is available. Ideally, you'll also want to be using Hodge whenever you can. And then the only AoE cast that happens is the Molten Giant's lava thing. This one, Molten Wake. So you want to make sure anytime that's coming out that you use Virtue. That is definitely the one spot to use Virtue. You can Virtue every single one of the casts. So pretty straightforward mob. Not much to really think about there, even in a pug setting. With this pack, ideally you want to focus the Earth Callers, same as earlier on in the dungeon. That Mass Tremor is the one that you want to look for. So focus the Earth Caller and make sure that Mass Tremor gets stopped. That's like the worst cast. If Mass Tremor gets off, it can be very dangerous for your group because it's a big AoE. But any other cast, not a huge deal. So definitely focus that mob and look for the Mass Tremor casts. Here we had to use a Lay on Hands and sack, and then we accidentally pulled boss. So a few things went a little bit wrong with this, but this boss, pretty straightforward, even in a pug environment. Anytime Forge Axe happens, that's when you want to Virtue, because that is the big AoE of the fight. There's not really any other damage that goes out other than that, unless people are just, baiting horribly and standing in fire and stuff, which can happen, but typically the fire is pretty easy to avoid on this fight, and most pugs should be able to do that. So the key is to make sure you always have Virtue and Holy Power going into every one of those Forge Swords casts. If you don't have Virtue available for that, it's probably not going to be fun. And the worst time is when Molten Fury, this cast. So right after Molten Fury, the boss starts doing Forged Sword. or Forge Mace or whatever, the AoE on the group. And there are still these debuffs out on the group. So that's definitely the most dangerous. I'd recommend if you don't have, you know, right there I had Awakening for it. If you don't have Wings or Throughput cooldown, probably good to fire off an AM when that Molten Fury cast is about to end. Because right at the end of the Molten Fury is when the AoE is going to happen and it's going to overlap with the debuffs. And then we just killed a boss. Oh, tank dies, Bubble Taunt, and Res. Don't forget, Bubble Taunt Res is the strongest way to recover if your tank ever wipes. Let's look at this. So this section is one that scares a lot of people, and rightfully so. We only have one decurse in this comp, so decurses, a lack of decurses can be very scary. But one thing I try to talk to people about is the decurses you'll actually see right here. They're only 11 seconds. So a lot of the times you can actually just let them expire. You don't have to heal them off unless there's other damage going out. So you want to look for kicks on the Warlocks. My kick's on CD here, but obviously we're just going to try and kick as much as we possibly can. So make sure that you use kicks on the Warlocks, and then watch out for the people that have absorbs. If there's any other damage coming on them, that's what you have to be careful for. If there's no damage going out and the Lava Bender is not phased, which means, you know, once he hits 50% health, he starts AoEing the group. That you need to make sure you're clearing absorbs at that point. But if it's before then and there's not really much going on, then you actually don't need to worry about clearing these absorbs. So you're going to see I let a few of these absorbs just time out. Unfortunately there, the tank dies. That's definitely not part of the plan. So the frontal sometimes does not have a visual indicator until the very last second. I don't know what causes that in this area. It's some sort of Z-axis issue probably. Okay, so he's going to cast Ascension here, and then he's going to start frontaling. And normally this frontal should have a big visual indicator that it's going this way. But it doesn't actually show up until about 80% through the cast. So you want to be very, very careful of that and make sure that you're paying attention to the frontals in this area. Even if the visual indicator is not going off, you should probably be aware that a frontal is happening. I definitely did not see that, and that for sure killed me. Okay, so these two lava bears are often a very scary part. Ideally, you don't want to push them at the same time. If you're in a pug setting, you want to try and just kill one at a time. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes pugs will, you know, phase them both at the same time. So this is a very, very strong pull to have wings for. Unfortunately, I did not have it up, and I definitely regretted this. I don't think we died, but it was very scary. So you'll see that I'm saving my Virtue for this first Ascension. This first Ascension comes out, I'm going to pop Virtue immediately. Make sure that I top the group as best I can within the Virtue window. And then as soon as Virtue ends, okay, Virtue's over now, so we're going to use Divine Toll. I opted to not use Divine Toll within that window because using Divine Toll in that window, while it's really strong, it can also end up making you super, super dry outside of your Virtue window. So I choose to not use my Virtue or my Divine Toll here because I'm able to top the group without it. And then as soon as Virtue drops and our group drops from the double Lava Bender push, now I'm going to immediately Divine Toll. And we're going to look for this big circle AoE. So when this circle AoE comes out while these lava benders are up, that is the highest damage in the game right there. It's very, very dangerous. So you're going to see me immediately bubble. I'm going to choose somebody to sack. Well, unfortunately, I actually did not have sack. So I'm going to choose someone to lay on hands instead. So I'm probably going to lay on hands the hunter. And then I will focus my healing onto the DK. Or at least I should, because he's the lowest health. So there's the lay on hands. There's the focus healing. And don't forget about Virtue. It's very important that you cast Virtue as much as possible. So right after I bubble, you'll see I go to Holy Light. As soon as there's a brief moment where nobody is going to die within one global, that's where I use Virtue. So this is the best time for me to press Virtue right here. So I'm going to Virtue there, and then I'm going to be able to start topping the group again. Now I could have Virtued one global earlier, but I opted for Holy Light instead, because when I started casting that Holy Light, the shaman was in a lot of danger. So once again, we'll just watch this really quick. Virtue falling off. We're going to Divine Toll. The circles are going to come out. We're going to bubble. We're going to use Word of Glory, lay on hands, some of our empowered Holy Shocks, and just make sure that we can top the group as fast as possible. So yeah, that's how I handled the lava bears. It gets a lot easier if you have wings. If I had wings there, you'll see it's infinitely easier. You don't even have to bubble. Like, you can just heal through it if you have wings, because you just have so much throughput. This boss is one that's very scary in pugs, and unfortunately this is one of the only bosses where you just have no control over whether or not your pug is going to succeed or fail, or at least you have very little control. Other bosses, you're able to do a lot of stuff to help, but on this boss, it's much harder because there are a lot of broken interactions currently with this boss. The first thing I want to mention is never bubble. If you bubble, well, never bubble while an ad is fixated on you. If you bubble while an ad is fixated on you, it'll refixate to somebody else who could potentially be in melee and just one-shot your entire group immediately. Another thing you don't want to use is blinding light. Any type of blinds or disorients will also make the ads refixate and could potentially just immediately blow up your group. I know that's very dumb, and I'm hoping that they'll fix it, but until that's fixed, you got to really be on the lookout for that. The main thing that you can do to help out your group on this boss is using Hodge. Hodge is a great tool to help your group avoid getting targeted or getting, smacked by their ad. So you want to look for if an ad is ever getting close to your group and make sure that you're using Hodge to help keep them away. Your best times to use Virtue in this fight, always going to be on the wing buffet. That is the big AoE of the fight. There aren't really many damage overlaps, so this isn't a high intensity healing fight. This is mostly just a coordination check. Decurses help a lot, but are not super necessary. You'll see I'm opting to use Virtue before Wing Buffet to just make sure that we get topped before the Wing Buffet hit goes out. The reason I choose to do that, and either are good, but if you use it before the Wing Buffet comes out, you can make sure your group is topped, and there's actually no damage event after the knockback that happens unless your team runs into the tornadoes. Now, I've found more often than not that the Wing Buffet can knock people into tornadoes, so after this, I kind of started to swap my healing profile to instead make sure that I Virtue during the Wing Buffet so that I can try to top people midair in case they happen to get hit into a tornado. But that's kind of just min-maxing, and in general, you shouldn't have to worry about it. So here's a good example. We're about to get knocked back, and this ad is very close to that player, and the knockback is coming. So I'm going to make sure that I Hodge this so that when the knockback hits, they don't accidentally get knocked into their mob, and they have time to react. So that's a very, very good way to utilize your Hodge in pugs, on this fight especially. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is this area. So this area, one of the things that most people don't necessarily know yet is how this ad actually works. These little hatchlings, when they die, amplify that damage. So before those hatchlings die, you can generally just heal through the ability, and it's not really going to hit that hard. The player shouldn't need much of a defensive. You should just be able to spot heal them through it. So make sure you're building up your holy power before that cast comes out. So here, the cast is going to come out in a few seconds. There it is. It's corrupt. So you want to make sure that you have holy power going into this. You see I'm at 5 holy power or 4 holy power right now. But none of the ads are dead yet, so this corrupt is not going to tick very hard. You'll see it's ticking for about 10-15% of his health. And so it's very manageable. But soon you're going to see these ads dying. So here you'll see all the ads are dying. You can see the stacking debuffs. And all of a sudden that ability is chunking a lot harder. So now that we're at 8 stacks, we know that the next corrupt cast is going to be very dangerous. So this is the one that you're going to want to send defensives on, or sack, externals, big cooldowns, whatever you have. Fortunately, it goes out on the shaman again, but it's going to die right before this happens. I did throw a sack on him just to be safe because that ability is very scary. And I know that I saved wings for this pull. This is one of the few times in M+ that I actually tell people save wings, because wings is so huge for this pull and making sure that nobody dies. You get so much spot healing power, and you're going to need it on this pull. So you'll see the reason why is because there are double the hatchlings and double the corruptors. So not only are you going to have twice as many stacks once these all die, but the corruptors are going to be, casting their single target ability twice as often because there's 2 of them. The first 2 that come out here, again, not a huge deal. You'll see I've got wings rolling. I can just heal through it. It's really not a big deal. It's totally fine. This is when things start to get sketchy. So all the ads are dying now, and the damage is ramping up very quickly. The DK, luckily, AMS is that one. That's normally the one where I would sack or just throw all my healing onto them. This is also a fantastic spot for bubble. I didn't have to use it here, which is always nice to save it for boss, but a lot of the times I will send it there. And this last boss is definitely the scariest boss in PUGs. What I'm going to talk about is my timings on this fight. So the first thing is you can Divine Toll every one of these Void Surges. So you're going to want to use Virtue right as the Void Surge starts, which you'll see me do right here. You're going to want Holy Power leading up to it so that you can just immediately start spending. You're going to see I spend all my Holy Power, and then I build on my Holy Power right back up using Divine Toll. I actually opted not to use Divine Toll here, which is unusual. I did it, I think, for all the other ones. But yeah, definitely you should always be using Divine Toll there. That was just a mistake to not do it. Or I just, I felt like I didn't need it. When this circle is collapsing, as soon as it hits its smallest spot and he starts casting this Abyssal Corruption, make sure that you spread away from the group. You want to be on the edge away from the other pugs, and you want to pre-cast Virtue. So you want to be using your Virtue before this cast actually finishes, partially because Virtue gives you DR, gives everybody in your group DR. It also allows you to not have to spend a global once the damage actually starts ticking. The damage event only lasts for about 6 seconds or so Virtue should cover the whole thing. So you'll see, as soon as I see that cast starting, I have Virtue out so that on the very first tick of damage that happens here, I can immediately just start healing. You also see that I had Holy Power going into that. Always important to have Holy Power going into your Virtue cast just so that you can immediately start to spend. So here I'm just going to spend. You don't have to worry about making sure that you're full health the whole time. You can let yourself drop. As long as you don't die from the very last tick, it's fine. Watch out for these hatchlings and their melees. They love to run at the healer, and it's very hard for tanks to get threat. So you'll often see me positioning a little weird when those hatchlings are coming out and making sure I'm on the other side. So once again here, another Void Surge. You'll see the very first thing is I cast Virtue, I spend my Holy Power, and then I use my Divine Favor or Holy Light, and then I'm going to Divine Toll to top us up, and then spend my Holy Power again, and boom, everybody is full health. We're happy, and then it's just rinse and repeat for this next one. One thing some people love to do in PUGs is to bubble and then clear a bunch of these tentacles on the ground, which I do actually think is a good idea. Admittedly, I kind of accidentally did it there, but it worked. So the last thing that you should look for is this Crush ability. So right after this AoE comes out, you need to watch your tank. You'll see I'm guarding my tank's life very carefully and watching for what he has. So I have sack available, and I'm actually deciding whether or not to sack him here. This Crush comes out, and I see that he pops Fort Brew, so I end up holding my sack, and don't worry about it. He's full health, he's got Fort Brew, he's chilling. I'm not too concerned. But yeah, that's definitely a very scary thing to watch for. And then obviously that was the threat issue on the ads. You can always look for a bop target there. Unfortunately, he died fast enough that I don't think I could have bopped him in the first place, but that is always just a good thing to look for. Again here, same thing as always. We're going to look to, Virtue and Divine Toll the big AoE, and now it's just the same thing where we're going to look for the small section that is safe. Probably a good idea, since you're spending Divine Toll on the big AoE on the group, you should probably reserve your AMs and your personals, like Divine Purpose, for that section where you have to spread out in a little circle. So that's where I use sack on the tank on that Crush. That time I wasn't able to top him beforehand, and his health was looking a little bit scary, and I knew that Crush was coming out. Here's the Crush indicator. It's on its way, so I sack him just to make sure. That tank debuff kills tanks all the time. It only happens right after that AoE, right after the, clump into the circle. As soon as the circle goes away, you're going to have a few seconds, and then the tank debuff will hit. So always be looking for that after the circle thing finishes. Hopefully that helped you guys. I know that it was kind of a lot of information at once. I am going to look for doing more of these videos where I kind of walk through a dungeon and talk about what I do. Probably going to focus on some hierarchies next time, but I did want to just kind of look at a PUG in this first week and give you guys an idea of how I play in a PUG setting and what I'm constantly looking for, whether it's, defensive usage from your tank or defensive usage from your DPS, or just like using Hodge and kicks and stuff on important casts. In general, obviously these dungeons are new, so there's going to be a learning curve for both you and for your PUGs. Try to be patient. as people take more unavoidable damage at the start of an expansion. And hopefully your DPS will be patient with you too. Much love, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you guys later.